By October 33 BC, Alexander the Great was moving south along the Mediterranean coast. Most cities had already surrendered, choosing to open their gates rather than face the Macedonian army's massive siege engines. Alexander's ultimate goal was Egypt. Taking the richest province of the Persian Empire would seize its grain, secure its ports, and dismantle the last anchor of Persian naval power in the Mediterranean. Gaza stood directly in his path, perched on a towering mound with artificially steep slopes. Approaching armies were exposed to fire long before reaching the gates. This elevation neutralized Macedonia's greatest strengths. Heavy cavalry could not charge up such a grade, and infantry lost momentum under their armor's weight. Bypassing the city was not an option. A hostile garrison left at his rear would eventually strike his supply wagons and messengers, effectively severing the connection between his advancing force and the northern coast. To reach Egypt, the man who dismantled the Phoenician coast had to find a way to defeat a single, massive pile of dirt. Alexander targeted the southern side of the fortress, launching a simultaneous attack above and below the surface. Underground, Macedonian miners cut through the earth to reach the city's foundations. They hoped to weaken the soil enough to cause the heavy stone battlements above to collapse under their own weight. On the surface, the army dragged massive wooden siege towers toward the wall. These machines were meant to carry soldiers to the height of the battlements, forcing the defenders to focus on the visible threat while the tunnels moved forward in silence. The environment proved more difficult than the defenders. Loose desert sand swallowed the wheels, and friction dragged against the frame, eventually causing the massive wooden structures to crack and stall mid-slope. From the walls, the Persian governor Batis saw the machines stop. He ordered a group of Arab mercenaries to charge out of the gates, hoping to burn the siege towers before the Macedonians could stabilize them. As fighting intensified around the machines, Alexander rode into the center to rally his workers. During the clash, an arrow pierced his shoulder, forcing him to withdraw as his siege works began to fail. Brute force and standard engines had proved insufficient against the height of Gaza. To break the city, the army would have to stop acting as soldiers and start acting as builders. Alexander realized that as long as the city held the high ground, his machines were useless. He decided to bring the ground up to meet the city. The army began a weeks-long engineering project of massive proportions. Thousands of men hauled baskets of soil and stone, packing them together to build a giant earthen ramp right against the southern face of Gaza's mound. Every basket of earth had to be laid while the workers were under fire from the walls above. The project moved slowly, demanding total focus, while the defenders used every rock and arrow they had to disrupt the construction. When the ramp finally reached its full height, the advantage of the fortress vanished. The Macedonian platform now sat level with the city's walls, providing a flat, stable surface for the heavy engines to operate. Heavy stone throwers were dragged onto this new ground and began a point-blank bombardment. Each strike weakened the southern defenses until the masonry shattered, leaving a wide gap in the wall. Elite Macedonian troops poured through the breach. With the wall broken, the battle moved into the streets, where the defenders were slowly cornered in alleys and courtyards. The siege ended when the terrain itself was overwritten. Alexander had effectively neutralized the fortress by building his own hill right on top of the battlefield. The final victory was a grueling massacre. Weeks of frustration and the king's own wound had stripped the army of any desire for mercy once they were inside the walls. Every man in the city was killed in the aftermath, while the women and children were taken away to be sold into slavery. Batis met a darker end. For refusing to kneel even after his defeat, Alexander had the governor tied to a chariot and dragged around the city he had tried to defend, a brutal echo of the fate of Hector in the Iliad. With the city in ruins, the strategic knot was untied. The road to the Nile was clear, and no Persian force remained to threaten the Macedonian rear. When Alexander reached the Egyptian border, the contrast was absolute. Having heard of the destruction of Gaza, the Egyptians welcomed him as a liberator, handing over the province without a single arrow being fired. Alexander's victory at Gaza demonstrated his capacity for relentless adaptation, showing that when he couldn't find a way through the landscape, he was willing to reshape the earth itself to keep his momentum alive.